Hello, and for what it's worth, Nick is not lying if you're not in the room. You were on a 20-foot screen, so they can see everything in your screen. So good on Bill for having a virtual background. But thank you guys so much. This is really exciting. For as long as we can still do it, I know things are touch and go at the moment, but we're glad to be able to see faces and be able to get together last, was it last week? It feels like it was like a month ago, but 2 weeks ago. We had our public meeting. It was great to see a lot of people at that as well. And it's really encouraging to see the park start to feel real. The changes, the development, the design, the input that this group has provided. And so it'd be great to get an update on that public meeting, and then also kind of look through where we are with some of our existing committee work in a little bit. So before that, what we need to do is just some housekeeping. So I'm gonna call Eric up to get us going with some approval of the minutes and other general information that we may need.
All right, everyone, thanks for coming. We're going to approve the minutes. So the meeting minutes were from last meeting and they were uploaded to our SharePoint site for your review. Before we approve the minutes, are there any questions or concerns from the committee? Okay. So we're going to move forward with approving the minutes. To simplify this, we're going to ask if there are any committee members who do not wish to approve the minutes. So if you do not wish to approve the minutes, let it be known. Okay, great. Thank you. The minutes are approved.
Thanks, Eric. I do want to know we do have an attendee. Doug Johnston is here listening in. I just want to make sure, Doug, if there's something you want to say to the committee, I know you haven't spoken to this group. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. If not, we'll keep moving.
Well, I hate to interrupt the progress of the meeting, so I'll just say hello, and I'll put a thing on the chat line about a really wonderful presentation this morning at the Leadership Committee meeting about parking. I think Janet may have had a hand in that too, and I'm especially grateful for the direction it's taking. I'm very encouraged.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you for joining us. I am going to share my screen. All right, as I mentioned, our agenda today, information heavy. We'll give some updates on our recap of the public meeting, a couple project updates, and then we'll get into task force reporting out. I'm going to immediately pass it to Kate, who's filling in for Grayson, who's out this week, to give a recap of public meeting 3.
All right. It's great to see everybody, and I really appreciate everyone that joined us at the public meeting. I thought it was really successful. It was a big design reveal. MBVA gave 2 presentations. We had about 250 people in person attended. Around 100 people participated on the live stream. We had both ASL and Spanish interpretation, both of which were utilized, which was really great. And the highlight definitely was everyone checking out the model. So if you weren't able to attend, or if you haven't checked out the model yet, please do so. But the purpose of the meeting was to provide an update on the current design of the Plaza Play. I think it was pretty well received. We got a little bit of feedback, but overall, people were really excited about the amenities and features, including the sand bowl, the grand stair, the watermill mountain, and the adventure play. It was great to be back in person. Kind of scary too, but we had people of all ages, all backgrounds, and there was such a positive energy in the room. And so I really appreciated the opportunity to get back in person, to have a discussion with the community, and to present a lot of the ideas that MBVA and everyone have been working on over the past 12 months now. I did want to pause and give everyone an update about the I'm going to minimize this a little bit, about the artists that were selected to join MVVA in designing art for the Plaza Play. There were over 100 submissions. The review committee, which I know some of you were on, selected 3 artists that are currently going under contract to work with MVVA in designing art pieces for the Plaza Play. Johnny Lee Chapman is a local artist, Mark Riegelman and Donald Lipsky. And if anyone from this committee participated in that process and wants to share any thoughts around it, I've heard a lot of positive things, and that the committee really felt good about the artists that were selected to move forward with working with MVVA on creating some pretty cool public art pieces for the park. But anyone in the room or anyone online that participated in that artist selection want to share anything?
Well, hey, this is Charles. I wasn't on the selection panel for this, but I did see Johnny Lee Chapman's performance with the Vital Health Group, and I thought that was really beautiful and really powerful. And I hope you heard good feedback about that as well, Kate. Yeah,
it was that the Vital Health Project was really amazing. And Johnny Lee Chapman, he's a performance artist and a spoken word artist. So I think his role is going to be really working with Mark and Donald on the history and legacy and how that could be potentially captured in an art piece. Any other comments for anyone that participated in the public artist selection process? I will note that there will be 2 engagement opportunities that the Office of Raleigh Arts is working on, and we'll share those dates at the end of the presentation. But that process is going to move very quickly so that the artists get aligned with MVVA so that the art is really embedded into the design of Plaza Play. I also wanted to share just an update on what's happening with Lake Wheeler Road. So on May 4th, City Council passed a budget amendment reallocating money to advance the design of Lake Wheeler Road. That's really great for us because it helps align the project timelines of the Plaza Play and the Lake Wheeler Road improvement project. It's also being closely coordinated with the Dix Edge study. And the Edge study is going to present, let me minimize this again. The Edge study is going to present recommendations on streetscape, a preferred streetscape to council in September. And then the Department of Transportation is going to issue an RFQ for an engineering firm to pick up that streetscape design and move it into design and engineering in October of 2021. They anticipate a 18 to 24 month design process and then a construction process after that. I hope our hamburgers and macaroni and cheese are under, okay, great. Because they're getting really wet right now. But what we're really pushing here is to coordinate the design of Lake Wheeler Road with the construction of Plaza Play so that those 2 projects are under construction at the same time. Big asterisks, we don't currently have funding for the construction of Lake Wheeler Road, so that is something that will need to be, we'll need to continue to stay on top of. So again, just the coordination schedule, and I'll show a simplified diagram of how all of this lines up at the end of the presentation. The other really important thing about what's going on, not only with Plaza Play and Lake Wheeler Road, but as you can see in this image, there are a number of private developments as well as other agency and infrastructure projects happening all in this same corridor. So the State Farmers Market is creating a new drive. There are significant sidewalk projects on Maywood Avenue. Healing Transitions is undergoing a site plan review and enlargement of their campus. And then there are 2 private developments, one known as Park City South and the other one we call the Atlas Stark development near where South Saunders intersect Lake Wheeler Road that are both in various stages of planning review. But what you can imagine is that both of those developments are looking at higher density mixed use development directly adjacent to the park. So that road project is critical, yes, for Plaza Play, but it's also critical for all the city building that is going on in this area of Raleigh. Any questions about Lake Wheeler Road before I turn it over to our friends in Raleigh at Raleigh Water? Yes, sir.
One quick question. I think I heard this when we were looking at the model the other night. Is Plaza Play the name we'll use for this?
That's a great question.
Plaza Play area, should it be? Any ideas?
Do you have a better name?
I don't know. It seems like there might be.
Yeah, I think it does seem like there might be a better name, and we don't have one yet. It's always been a placeholder name. So in the master plan, all of these things were named fairly generically, like the creek, the meadow, Plaza Play, right? And so the branding and naming of this, I think, will be really interesting as we move forward. So just to repeat what Jay said is that conversation came up a lot during the public meeting, and MVBA's response was, yeah, those are basically placeholder names and they want something really authentic to place and of Raleigh. And so more to come. And if this group has ideas, I think we are all open to them. Yeah, Jay suggested the Zebra Cobra Plaza Play.
Is there any intention to seek donations by the Conservancy and name them or sell or whatever? I guess you don't really sell them, but offer naming rights?
Yes, definitely. So the Conservancy is actively working on that, and the city recently passed a donor recognition and naming rights policy to enable the Conservancy to do that. Whether or not it changes, right? Like it could be the Plaza Play sponsor, or thanks to the Kate Pierce Family Foundation, which I don't have, but there are many ways to do that. So I think that's some of the things that we're working through the Conservancy on, but that opportunity definitely exists. And maybe a name will come from that. Other questions or Ollie?
Yeah. It's exciting to hear about Lake Wheeler Road. What is the voice of bike pedestrian access or crossing on that corresponds with the Plaza Play?
Yeah, so the current cross section, and I'm probably going to mess this up, it's much more of a complete street design with complete bike ped separated facilities. So the Planning and Transportation Department presented 3 different custom streetscapes to the community, and the one that the community preferred had separated bike pedestrian facilities along Lake Wheeler. Other questions from the in-person group or the online group? All right, I'm going to turn it over to our friends at Raleigh Water, and they're going to provide an update on a critical water project that impacts our park. So Eileen, am I turning it over to you?
Yeah, I think so. Hold on a second. Just trying to get my screen prepared. I will not suggest that I'm an expert at these hybrid meetings, but and I'm probably larger on, for those of you in person, I'm probably larger on the screen than I would like to be. My name is Eileen Navarrete. I'm the engineering manager in Raleigh Water. I oversee Raleigh Water's capital improvement program. And with me is Dennis Lassiter, also from Raleigh Water. Dennis is one of the engineers on staff, and he's a project manager for this really important water line project that is ultimately going to go through Dix Park. So we're here to talk about that project tonight, to let you all know what to expect, when it's going to happen, what the benefits are, what some of the temporary impacts are, permanent impacts are to the park, and of course answer any questions that you all have. So In the interest of saving my bandwidth, I'm going to turn my camera off while I share my screen. So hopefully I don't wind up getting choppy. And if you all happen to hear a screaming toddler in the background, it is the witching hour in my house. All right, share my screen. Can you all see PowerPoint?
Yes.
Is the actual slides, are they up right now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so thank you all for giving us some time in your meeting to talk about this really important project. I'm going to talk through some slides, and then at the end, be happy to answer any questions that you might have. This, for any of you who may regularly watch city council meetings, this is just a slightly different version of a presentation that we co-presented to the city council. I guess it was in June, early June now. So some of it will look familiar. There's a few more details in here. We've been working really closely with Kate on this project. And Kate, as I talk, if there's anything you want to jump in and add, please feel free to do so. Come on, computer. There we go. Okay, so just an introduction. We're going to talk about the need for the project, the routing analysis we did to determine where it was best to put the pipe, talk about where the pipe is ultimately, some cost estimate and timeline information, as well as a brief discussion of the communication plan for the project. So this project was first identified in the 2016 Water System Master Plan. In Raleigh Water, we have master planning documents that look out 25 to 30 years for all the major components in our system. So the water system, the collection system, our treatment processes, things like that. And we look for, based on growth and need and condition of our infrastructure, where we try to plan where we need to make our investments. And in the 2016 Water System Master Plan, we realized we needed some redundancy and capacity increases in what we call the 595 pressure zone, which is the westernmost pressure zone in our service area. So that includes parts of NC State, Carter Finley Stadium, Rex Hospital, PNC Arena. And essentially what we found in looking at the master plan was we needed to be able to move more water from one of our treatment facilities over to that portion of the service area to ensure that we ever had a failure somewhere else in the system, that we could make sure we could keep that westernmost pressure zone in full service. And especially having a major hospital in that pressure zone, that's pretty important to us. So what the master plan determined was we needed to get a pipe between the old Bain water treatment plant, which is just off Wilmington Street inside 440, up to the water booster pump station we have that's adjacent to Pullen Park. And so somehow we needed to get a 36-inch pipe from point A to point B to help feed that part of the service area. I promise you the line you see on the screen is not the route. So in the interest of time, this is going to be a little bit oversimplified, but to get from point A to point B, we looked at a number of different route alternatives. But in the park area specifically, we really looked at three main alternatives. You'll see generally an orange route, a red route, and a blue route. And the orange and the red were further outside of Dix Park, and then the blue route goes through Dix Park quite a bit. And then you'll also see there's a little bit of a tail of bright orange that needs to be done with this project, regardless of the other alternatives. So these were the three that we examined, and you're looking at cost, you're looking at impact, you're looking at at benefits, how the water, how the pipe can serve others. There's a whole host of things, environmental impacts for wetlands, streams, things like that. So there's quite a bit that goes into it. Ultimately, the route, well, you'll see here, the route that goes through Dix Park is the one that we settled on. And I'm going to go into kind of what that looks like. But essentially, the reason that we settled on it is it provides the most number of benefits for both Parks and Recreation and for Raleigh Water. So looking at some of the park benefits, it's going to give Dix Park access to public water infrastructure that it doesn't have now. Many of you all may be aware that there are some existing pressure and fire flow issues within the park property, and this line will help, we expect it will help address some of those issues. And what it does is it brings public water infrastructure into the park. So ultimately, it's more cost effective for Raleigh Water, but it will also save Parks and Recreation a significant amount of money from going to the public right of way in the main road and having to run public water into the park. So we're also working with Kate and other staff to identify strategic tapping locations. So those would be places along the pipe in the park where we would basically stub out a smaller line that would basically be the foundation and the beginning of the water distribution system inside the park. And then the other thing that's a benefit is this project is right near some of our reclaimed water system. And for those of you who aren't familiar with reclaimed water, it's also called recycled water or reused water, depending on really which state you're in. And reclaimed water is highly treated wastewater that is put towards beneficial use aside from human consumption. So it can be irrigation, it can be cooling towers. Raleigh has a system, and this project happens to kind of skirt right by the existing system, which serves Centennial Campus. And so when we install this water line, we're also going to install a reclaimed water line in the same trench. And so long-term, that means this project will also give Dix Park access to reclaimed water to use it potentially inside the park. Of course, with anything else, there are impacts to the park. When we have hashed out a route that is compatible with the master plan that we know took so much time and effort to create. And so this has minimal, if any, impact on the future of the park in terms of what can and can't be done in critical areas. During construction, there's going to have to be a coordination with events. And of course, we will be in the park doing construction. And then the other piece that we know folks get concerned about is tree removal when we come in and do these utility projects. I'm going to talk a little bit more about tree removal in a minute, but I feel confident that we've been working with Kate and her team, as well as the folks in urban forestry, to minimize impacts to trees and actually to strategically remove trees where there will be a benefit to the park in some way, shape, or form to have them removed. So talking about trees, as I said, we have coordinated that quite a bit with the Parks Department and specifically urban forestry. The folks in urban forestry have been really generous with their time to kind of give us some tips on, small adjustments we could make that would ultimately benefit some of the trees and prevent some of them from having to be removed or put under stress due to the project. The plan is for especially any larger trees that are removed from the park site, the goal would be to repurpose them on the park site itself. So whether those are benches, picnic tables, or other uses, the goal would be that we wouldn't just come in and clear them and take them away, that they would stay on the site and be reused on the site. And then of course, as we go through, Raleigh Water will make repairs to the ground of any impacted areas from the project. So honing in a little bit further on the tree removal piece, that's always seems to be what folks have the most questions about, is if the next few slides are going to identify the areas of tree removal and exactly what's being removed where. And this will be the blue line and the yellow line. This shows you where the pipe is really going to go. So starting from the north, the first area is a wooded area, and it skirts, I'm sure many of you all know, there's an old landfill on the north side of the park, and this portion skirts that landfill. It does dip through it in the narrowest portion possible. And so this is going to be your largest area of tree clearing, is within the landfill limits. There's a grove of pines here, and our clearing limits here are probably going to be about 80 feet wide. Now, these trees will have to be cleared eventually anyway. And that's because of the landfill and permitting and things like that. And so, so we're just getting out, I guess, a little bit ahead. And we've talked with parks about maybe trying to take advantage of that and having, Kate, you may want to jump in here, mulch paths or walking trails through this area where we do have to clear. Is that, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Kate.
Yeah, the idea was to create a trail where they were cutting through the pine grove, which I think could be cool. And hey, Eileen, we probably have about 5 more minutes if you can.
Yeah, no, I'm almost done, don't worry.
Awesome, thanks.
The second area is the area by the flower cottage. This is the most impactful area simply because there are some really old, beautiful trees in this area. We've worked at this pretty painstakingly with urban forestry, and this table here shows the size of the trees, the number of them that are going to be removed with the project. I feel confident that we've been able to minimize that in this area. And then as you go through and kind of entering the big field, there's one very large tree that's going to come out that's actually going to help provide access for large festivals and other things of that nature once it is removed. But there was no way to get in and out of the big field without removing at least one tree. And then the railroad area that's near Good Street. You see there's, again, to get in and out, there is one large tree that has to come out, and then there are several others that are much smaller. And so just really quick, since we don't have a lot of time, their project does run outside the park down Maywood, excuse me, and there will be some water and sewer main replacement work done along with the project, and some neighborhood impacts, which we'll be talking about with the impacted neighborhoods separately. We're hoping to advertise the project later this fall. It's been pushed back a little bit just because we're trying to make sure we can pre-qualify and get a really good contractor out there. Start construction early next year. Construction duration is 18 to 24 months. That doesn't mean 18 to 24 months inside the park. And we'll be able to kind of time that with some of the bigger festivals and events to avoid that. We'll do the tree removal in the park ahead of the utility construction, probably late this year. And then the total project cost estimate at the moment is about $19 million. So you all are an important part of our communication plan, communicating with stakeholders in the area. We're going to be talking to neighborhoods around the area, NC State, other state departments, as well as other neighborhoods impacted by construction. And with that, I am happy to take any questions you have. See, Kate, told you.
That was great. Thank you so much. Any questions? I'm gonna, Eileen, will you stop sharing your screen so we can see the whole group?
Yeah,
any
definitely.
questions from in the room or online? Oh, Bill?
Yeah, two quick ones. First of all, just to comment, I really hate to see the trees lost, but I know you're working hard to do everything you can. And these are all very old and pretty, dramatic trees, so they'll be missed. When this is done, there's going to be pretty intense development along the farmers market section, and also according to plans, and also probably on the Spring Hill area. With the water line being in the center of the Great Field and over through the Flowers Field, does that mean that each time a new development comes along, there will need to be some type of connection into that water line that happens to sit within the park, and there'll be disturbance down the road of all of these new developments as they come in? That's the first question. Second one is, will there also be some hard structure within the Great Field, fire hydrants, things like that, that will be part of what's visible on the surface from the, putting the line there? Thank you.
As far as the park develops, I know Parks and Rec is going to undertake a utility master plan so that it kind of moves orderly and that in an orderly fashion. And that's a lot of why we're putting these stub outs in, to kind of keep it from being haphazard as things do develop. It's inevitable that as development occurs, there's going to be some disturbance, but the disruption, generally speaking, from my experience, the disruption of a new 8-inch distribution line being put 3 feet in the ground is less of a big deal than, a 36-inch and a 16-inch line going, in the same trench. So what you see when this project goes to construction, it shouldn't really be what you expect when other things move forward. As far as hard structures, Dennis, I'm going to let you answer that because you're in the details on the plans. I know we will have to have some kind of marker periodically along the pipe, but we've already committed that we're going to kind of work with that to, make it blend and make it not be the, a standard fiberglass or plastic pole sticking out of the ground. But as far as, Dennis, you want to speak to hydrants?
Yeah, I think there may be some hydrants or some kind of blow-off appurtenances, but I mean, they'll be spaced very, very far apart and everything probably, and strategic locations and stuff probably to blend in with the rest of the amenities or trees and stuff like that possibly.
And Bill, the reason it went through the middle of the field instead of in that roadway or adjacent to that roadway was to save all those trees, because the critical root zones of those trees expand a good distance into the road and into the big field. So we were trying to avoid all of that with the location of it in the big field.
Yeah. Well, perhaps the fire hydrants can be situated on the stub outs and closer to where a fire truck may actually, they'll need a road to get to something like. If when in the end, I hope we can look at the big field and hope that it looks intact and there isn't a lot of things we particularly don't care about there in the center or middle or wherever. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yep, Ollie.
So you're going to be tired of me being back, I think.
I know.
Yeah. I was just curious about where where it comes out, where that pipe is coming out close to Western Boulevard. Does that become a de facto entrance into Dix Park? Because
no, it'll actually be like a tunnel bore underneath Western Boulevard. So really no one will even know that it's there long term. And we did coordinate, I think there's discussion of perhaps at some point some kind of land crossing right over Western Boulevard, and we did coordinate to make sure that we weren't, exactly where that was going to be, because that's not something we want our pipe to necessarily be under.
but the trees will be cleared along that path, pointing right at Pullen Park, right?
Yes. So one of the, I think there's some interesting opportunities for pedestrian connections through from the restored Rocky Branch up through the park there. And that's something that we'll work through with the creek feasibility. But one of the things that Eileen touched on is we need to really work with the state, because that pine grove that's right there, their standard operating procedure would be to clear that with the remediation of the landfill. So we're trying to maximize the benefit of creating like a trail system or something through that area.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the group? Eileen, Dennis, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It's good information, and you now have a number of informed people that can answer some questions about this, hopefully.
Great. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
All right, continuing forward. We want to introduce kind of an evolution of some work that was started in the master plan. This is going to be a fairly high level introduction to what we're calling an expansion of our implementation plan, which is basically our master plan version phase 2. So it's implementation plan, and it's focused on 2 different areas. The first is on the site, the buildings and the infrastructure. And the second is on the use of the buildings and the partners that can be brought in to help us with what will, the programs for the different buildings. If you dig into the master plan, and I know a lot of you folks are familiar, there's some recommendations on different categories of uses. There's recommendations for buildings that can be retained and those that will be demolished. And this will be building off of that work. That is a significant influence into this. And we are going to be working with a group out of the UNC School of Government called the Development Finance Initiative. They assist communities with public-private partnerships like we have for providing specific or specialized financial and real estate expertise. So as a public group, we feel confident that they can represent the public interests in this, as we're planning a park, and this is not a real estate opportunity. This is a park project, and we need to bring in partners to help us develop and understand the community desires and needs, what we're calling our public interests for the buildings. So I'm going to overview a little bit of the scope of what they're going to be looking at. It involves these different items, starting with a community scan. So this is, again, building off the really in-depth engagement we did during the master plan. We identified 2 groups that they will engage most heavily with, the first being the leadership committee and the second being this committee, the community committee. So you will meet these folks, they will be here, they will be running activities and engagement with us, with the goal of establishing what they call their public interests. So the guiding public interests for our partners for the uses of the buildings. Another piece of work, they're looking outside of the park at the different parcels around. There is a lot of movement that is happening around the park, as we're all aware of, understanding land use trends, private investment trends, ownership, and conducting a market analysis of the different uses around the park, immediately around, but are also in the adjacent downtown area and larger, and seeing what the demand will be for different uses in the park buildings. I mentioned 2 different sides of this. They will be working closely with a second team of firms that will work to evaluate existing conditions related to infrastructure. So the kind of hardscape and underground water, sewer, stormwater. We have some intense infrastructure needs at this campus if we're developing according to the master plan. We have an aging infrastructure system that basically needs to be decommissioned and started fresh. So they'll provide some recommendations and next steps here, and they will also perform our more in-depth building review. So structural code review, engineering review of the buildings, and that will build off to provide some recommendations for adaptive reuse and any constraints that may exist. Another piece of work that DFI specializes in is the financial feasibility piece. at scenarios of mix of uses in the buildings. There are a significant number of buildings, and the challenge here is determining the right mix of uses. We want a varied use plan for the park that must address our stakeholder interests, our site realities, DHHS's commitments and timeline on the campus, and also the market conditions. They'll partner that with development finance tools, including historic preservation tax credits, but also looking at TIF and TIGs that we've been hearing a lot about. And that will all come together in a deliverable that's a financial feasibility analysis and a financial model. The last piece, and something we'll hear a little bit more about shortly, is on the partnership side. We've identified our partnership process as a priority of work for anything we're doing related to the buildings. And when we're saying partners in this context, it's building specific. On the tenant level partners, we use partners in other ways as well. To push this work along, we've created a task force, which we'll hear from today, but the DFI group will pick up the results from the task force work of this year and establish a formal criteria and framework for evaluating and selecting partners, with a deliverable being a portfolio of partnership opportunities related to specific buildings and sites at the park. Finally, kind of summarizing all of the projects that we have presented today, and then we'll open it up for questions. This is how these projects coordinate in terms of timeline. The Plaza Play is ongoing in design and will conclude in 2024. Lake Wheeler Road is following a somewhat similar timeline, as those are very connected. This implementation planning will kick off this summer and fall and be complete in about a year, so a year to 18 months. And then the Rocky Branch project is kicking off this summer, and it's also an 18-month project. So all of these are happening in concert. Our team is very passionate about doing these at the same time. We know that we need to create some successes immediately. And we think that all of these have to happen in the short term to build the kind of larger vision for the park. So, do you have something to add? Questions from the group? I know we've shared a lot. This is kind of finishing our project updates, and then we're going to move to our task force. But specific questions on building work or anything that was just shared?
Nick, do you want to talk? Oh, I see Bill's got his hand, but just how it coordinates with the EDGE study. Is there any overlap?
Yes, the EDGE study ties in specifically to the Lake Wheeler Road improvements. It provides our first round of recommendations for streetscape and road design. It also provides some recommendations on the adjacent communities across Lake Wheeler Road. And that will be picked up in the community scan by DFI and the market analysis and the adjacent property parcel analysis as well. So that will be an input into DFI mostly, since that work is already underway. Go ahead, Bill.
Thanks, Nick. During the adoption of the master plan towards the end, there was a fair amount of talk, and I think I probably led a good bit of it into, if we're going to preserve or try to preserve somewhere between 0 and 30 buildings, and I think the master plan listed around 30, and there are all the large buildings, and the cost of restoration and so forth of that. One of the things that was requested and put into the master plan was each of the buildings and the proposed uses for those buildings would be discussed before final say to the public at large. What's your plan for engaging the public into that? And I know it's complicated right now in our current times, but this is going to be a big issue because we begin to move away from a park into a lot of commercial potentially. Everybody says the arts and, the C3 organizations and those that provide public services, they really fit inside a park. And things like museums like Marbles. Then there's the question about whether or not offices and retail business and things like that also fit in. So I know this is probably pretty far out there, but anything you can share right now would be great. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Bill, the first piece of that is this group, as our representative group of the larger community, will be the first point of contact. They'll provide the background information of the master plan, the results from the findings that they have in their early analysis, and we'll have our first conversations here. We've also included in their scope, they have fee for doing community engagement, and I think this group will be involved in helping design that, but it's identifying the different community specific subgroups or members of the community that need to be involved and want to be involved in these decisions, and including them on the front end before any of the analysis actually happens. So that's what they call their community scan. It's a really in-depth engagement effort, but it wants to be focused on this group first and building out from there. Other questions? Let's move into our task force reporting out, because I know we set an earlier end today. I'm going to ask Jay to come up to kick us off here, and then we'll get into each task force.
All right, I'm going to be very brief. Shauna is unfortunately unable to join us, as she typically does the chair report, but there was a leadership committee meeting today, and this presentation is very much what was shared with them. And so not much more to add there. There was some additional discussions on parking. If you have questions about that, you can check in with Kate or Stephen, and they'll be able to answer that. But I'm going to quickly transition it over to Simone, who's going to give an update on the equity task force. Simone, you can just click through the slides, and then when you're done, you can pass it to Eric.
All right, so I will try to be brief, but essentially for everyone in person, you have this sheet on the table, and this also got emailed out to everyone. It was included in Nick's email, and it basically summarizes what I'll give an overview of and what we've been working on within the Equity Task Force, which is establishing a park equity definition and narrative. Oh, and by the way, I'm Simone Frank. I'm a member of the Equity Task Force. We're rotating in all the meetings, so all right. So just a bit of background to sort of ground us. In July of 2020, the city of Raleigh established the Office of Equity and Inclusion. And early work in this office really, it involved the development of a definition sheet of important terms. And there's a quote up here that sort of highlights the importance of using shared language kind of across equity initiatives in the city. And really wanting to focus on using shared language and shared terms to kind of ground us as the foundation of all kind of city-related equity work. So this is the City of Raleigh definition of equity. I'll just read it. It's justice, fair treatment, and opportunity for the advancement of all people across all systems: housing, education, economics, healthcare, environmental, social, and community. So this is the definition that the City of Raleigh came up with. And sort of to ground us in what's been happening on the Dix Park planning side, this work around equity started with the Master Plan Advisory Committee several years ago. So during the master planning effort between 2017 and 2019, city staff was directed to develop a park equity plan for Dix Park. And there was this really amazing equity plan framework document that was developed in 2019, 2020, really detailed, really comprehensive. If you're interested, I recommend that you check it out. But an early kind of process recommendation in this framework was to develop a park-specific definition of equity. And they also recommended the creation of an equity task force to help organize planning efforts and support and coordinate with larger departmental and city initiatives. And so we, the Equity Task Force, most of our work thus far has revolved around kind of adapting the City of Raleigh equity definition to fit the context of Dix Park and kind of the ongoing equity plan development work happening around the Dix Park project. So we spent some time as a task force kind of reading through the equity plan framework, kind of seeing if the park specific dimensions that were identified in that framework kind of still resonated, still held up, if there was anything we felt was missing or wanting to add. And we spent a few meetings developing a park specific definition of equity that's included in this narrative document. So I'm just going to read our definition that we are proposing, that we put together. And it is justice, fair treatment, and opportunity for the advancement of all people across all dimensions of park operations and development. Affordability, economic opportunity, engagement, accessibility, partnerships, programming, health, and legacy. And so as I mentioned, kind of these dimensions are meant to represent kind of the full range of areas of park development and operations that equity initiatives can be established within. And again, we use that equity plan framework to guide our inclusion of these various dimensions. So this list here has been vetted by the Equity Task Force. And I don't know how much discussion we'll have time for tonight within the full committee, but we're hoping that folks can kind of read through the definition and narrative that we've provided and provide comments, suggestions for things that you might want to update or change. Just we'd really love feedback from the full committee, and then we'll be looking to approve this definition to ground all of the equity work moving forward. So I think that's it. I will pass it along to Eric. Yes, I am getting the move on from Nick.
All right. I am not Eric. I am Ashton instead, also standing in for Shauna tonight to talk you all through the early park improvements committee and the work that we have done in the last couple of weeks. Really, we've been kind of approaching this with a mindset of a couple of different things, and that is, go backwards a little bit on this, the criteria we wanted to focus on is how do we get the most number of people into the park? How do we get them to stay? How do we make them enjoy their time there? And then thinking about what the necessities are in the park in this early time frame as we build out these grand and extravagant plans that we've got that we're all so excited about. And then we were lucky that we got to work with our equity task force teammates to really apply an equity lens to how we were thinking about some of these improvements. So, you know, taking the feedback that we had from the early meetings with this group as a larger sense, the feedback that we've gotten from the community, and really folding it into what are the priorities for this group. So we decided that the best way to approach it, or the most logical perhaps, was probably through an infrastructure bucket and an amenities bucket, because I think we've all had these kind of push and pull feelings about, well, we need bathrooms, but we also really need this other stuff, and we need the fun things that people want to come to the park for. And so what we've realized is that we actually have to have both. We have to have these infrastructure improvements. People have to feel safe. People have to have access, and they have to have the basic amenities to want to visit the park and to want to stay in the park and enjoy it and spend time there with their family and loved ones. But we also have to have things for them to do. And so walking loops and some of the public art that we've talked about in the sports courts as well. So we really broke these things out into two buckets, also considering how funding happens, because none of this is free. And there is a limited amount of city budget that can support the infrastructure side of things. And then there are conservancy dollars and fundraising opportunities to help develop a lot of the amenities side of it. So again, hoping to align these kind of two ideas as a way to break out what our priorities are, but also empower this committee to advocate on behalf of some of these improvements that we think are really important in the short term. So I think that's the run of it. Are there questions that you all have or further information you want to on how we kind of got to some of these?
I'd be curious how you're defining a safety audit.
Oh, yeah, good one. So what we decided on that, there was a lot of conversation around physical safety in the space, you know, the security of it, especially as we have more events after dark and really those kinds of things, emergency services, all of that. But we realized that we couldn't make decisions about what those priorities should be without understanding the current state of things as they are. So the idea behind a safety audit was really to work with our partners in kind of the public spaces and in public safety to understand where the gaps are in the park currently. What makes people feel unsafe? What do they need? Do we have to have more lighting? Do we need more emergency poles? Do we need these different kinds of things? Or are there other opportunities that we have that we can make people feel safe and comfortable in the park. Does that kind of answer what you need?
That's great. And then I have another one. If there's not somebody else with their hand raised, the accessibility improvements, I mean, that's great. How much can we do before DHHS departs the campus? And then is that also going back to Nick's DFI summary, are they going to make suggestions there as well, or is that beyond their scope?
I was going to try to make something up, but Kate knows that I can't answer that question.
So one thing we're doing immediately is basically a sidewalk audit analysis that is looking at the gaps of our existing sidewalk system, because it's our best first step to create connections and fill those existing gaps. There is limited things that we can do, but we can do some things. So that is we've got our kind of GIS analysis, and we'll be building off of that. And then I believe Lauren and team are also going to be setting up some time with Carol to walk through that analysis to prioritize what improvements we can make on a short-term basis.
My dogs were not able to make tonight's meeting, so they wanted me to ask about the displacement that they're feeling is impending based on the dog park.
Yes, so as all of you are aware, the Plaza Play is on the current site of the temporary dog park. We have a couple of locations that will be announced in September at the Yappy Hour, and your dog will have a lovely, grassy, shady, safe spot to relocate to, big, with water. So all of our four-legged friends, mine included, will have a new home once well in advance of when the Plaza Play goes under construction. Oh, right, well, anyone can have her. Other questions about early park improvements?
I had a question, just because I've heard such great feedback about the Frisbee Golf, and I know that was something that we were talking about. Is that still on the roadmap or under one of these categories? Or?
Yeah, the Frisbee Golf really is a program versus an amenity. So we're going to work to pop up Frisbee Golf again. And so it's more of a programmatic pop-up versus a permanent installation. But yes, there will be a Frisbee Golf course in sometime this fiscal year. How about that? We're working it out.
That's great. And just one other comment too, I think it's really, really smart that accessibility improvements are listed under infrastructure. And just, you might think about what kind of unified communications around accessibility infrastructure improvements and accessibility programmatically. I just have had some feedback that, some of the programs haven't had as much communication around that as might be desired. So there could be a real opportunity for a win around that. Just something to think about there as well.
That's a great piece of feedback. Thanks, Charles. Hope you're feeling better. Any other questions from the group, whether online or in person? All right, Eric, you're up. And I think people are getting frozen and hungry, so hopefully we'll get through these next slides quickly. And I'm going to stay up here because there might be some questions.
Yeah, that'd be great. So I'm updating you guys about the park partnership task force that we've been doing. The things that have changed the most is that our scope of work has evolved. We're more focused on the midterm and short-term program vendors and partners rather than the long-term partners who might need infrastructure, buildings, long-term leases, and that's going to be covered more by a city study that will be happening in the near future. So we're kind of dividing and conquering the responsibilities. So we're going to focus more on food concessions, art partners, temporary partners, that sort of thing. So obviously Marbles is the thing we got to talk about. So Marbles is a long-term partner. It's an institutional partner, but we did have a preliminary review with our committee, and we used our partnership asset scorecard to determine that they would be a good fit for the park. That's very preliminary. Obviously, we don't have a ton of say in whether it happens or not, but we do believe it would be a great partner for the park. Do you have anything to add to marbles?
Just to bring everyone up to speed on the marbles conversation, the marbles board has indicated an interest in moving marbles to Dix Park, and we have been directed to evaluate that opportunity. And so we brought it to the task force, they evaluated it, gave it a thumbs up, and now we're rolling it into the DFI study.
All right, great. So we got some major decisions looming. So DHHS is obviously one of the things that we're worried about, that they're spending $12.3 million in 2017 for campus operations and maintenance. The rehabilitation, demolition of buildings is going to cost $114 million to $240 million, and everything needs to be upgraded, including utilities, systems, and code requirements. There are interests from a lot of organizations on the future location at Dix Park, and Park Partnerships is renovating and maintaining buildings can reduce the burden of maintenance and produce revenue to support the park. So anything that we can do to kind of dovetail the fact that the buildings are a bit old with the people out there who want to be part of the project. So the next steps. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is we are doing a food and concessions focus group / roundtable with some industry leaders. It's Dean Ogan with Rocky Top Catering. He owns some restaurants and event spaces. He's also the exclusive caterer for the Science Museum and for Keenan Stadium at UNC. The other panelists, two panelists, are Maggie Kane, and she's the founder and executive director of A Place at the Table, Raleigh's Pay What You Can Cafe. And the final panelist is our very own Nick Neptune, who is the general manager and one of the visionaries behind the highly successful Transfer Food Hall in East Downtown Raleigh. So the purpose of this is to have them sit down here with us. It's going to be next week, Wednesday, August 4th from 6 to 7:30. We're going to have some questions for them about how to create successful food and concessions partnerships in the park and what they look when they see offers for quotes and for partnerships and for contracts and that sort of thing. So it will be open to the whole committee, not just the task force. So if you'd like to come, or we'll probably do it on Zoom as well, you can definitely check that out and hear some interesting facts from some industry leaders in the city. So that's that event. And then the final thing is that staff is working on a scope of work for implementation plan, which is what we're talking about, the long-term partnerships that we as the subcommittee are moving away from. So with that being said, is there any questions about anything that I presented?
Did you have a date for the focus group?
Yes, so yeah, it will be next Wednesday, August 4th in this building from 6 to 7:30. It will be about an hour and a half. We're gonna have some questions for them and they can present what they want, and then we'll have kind of a free form Q&A session as well.
Thank you.
We will email that out in our recap email.
Sorry.
I have one recommendation. I don't know if you can see me out there.
Yep, Bill, we got you.
Okay, good. One recommendation, I know that you listed between 114 million and 240 million, the cost of demolition and reconstruction. I would like to see those numbers separated. I've worked fairly extensively with the person that did the evaluation of the buildings for the state government about a decade ago, as they looked at what buildings to demolish and which buildings they needed to restore. And after talking with him on several occasions, the demolition of all the buildings on the park were estimated by him, and he's the pro at this, and he is, by the way, located here in Raleigh, were put at around $10 million. Now that may not be an accurate number in today's numbers, but I'm sure it hadn't doubled or tripled since then. And having that number out there would give you a real good definition of what it costs to take everything out. Not that that's a suggestion, it's just that that is one baseline that's easy to come to. And then it lets you see the restoration and improvement costs as they exist in real terms. So I would highly recommend you separate those two numbers if you can. And if you need the reference to that particular individual, I'd be glad to provide it for you.
And I would recommend that when you separate those two out, you bring the costs up to date because they've changed dramatically in the last 2 years.
I think that's great. Do you have anything to add to that? Yeah, well, we can definitely look into that as well.
I would agree.
All right, is there any other questions from the room or from Zoom? All right, I think we're good. Thank you guys, appreciate it.
All right, I'm gonna pass it briefly over to Janet. We have kind of something that we should talk about as a committee that's related to the bond. Bonds are how majority of park projects are funded, and there are some updates. I'm gonna pass it to Janet to give a quick update and open it up to the room for some questions, because I know there's some confusion on what's happening related to the bond.
That's great, thanks. And I will, I didn't have time to make it to the meeting in person for this, but I will join you for the social hour, so save me a burger. I will be coming shortly. And then also, I just want to publicly thank Bill Paget for working with Nick and Melissa to get us a golf cart. I feel like we have sort of arrived. We got it used from state surplus. And then also some great updates and committee work by all of you. So just a thank you to all the work that this committee is doing. And your name keeps getting raised for many, many tasks and committees. And so hopefully you guys won't burn out and are up for some other, public art and other things. But so the bond update, as you know, municipal elections were postponed to November 2022. And that we consulted with a lot of lawyers, and, I think as y'all know, that is when the bond is now scheduled. The city, the mayor, the city manager, council have all, I think, heard a lot from Parks supporters, not just Dix, that we all don't want this to delay our projects. And then in particular, Councilmember Buffkin asked at the table, I think it was July 6th session, to have a work session so that they understand how we can keep projects on schedule, including Dix Park, for interim sort of gap financing, so that if the money, it comes in November, we could still break ground in July. So we are still planning to break ground in July based on at least kind of a high level assurance that this will not delay the project. But I think we need to, understand a little with more detail, obviously, how that might work. In terms of this group, we still want to get ready for all of the public outreach that will take place ahead of that Parks Bond vote. And as you know, the last one in 2014, the city takes an active role in educating folks about the Parks Bond. But it is, and thanks, Nick, for advancing that. The Chamber of Commerce, the Raleigh Chamber of Commerce, has actually run a lot of these public bond campaigns. They work with various, consultant groups to get out the vote, because the city obviously can't advocate for its own bond. The Conservancy can, so we can both, and have said that we would financially support the Chamber's efforts on educating people about a parks bond, getting people out to vote. And that would be for the bond as a whole, in addition to obviously advocating for Dix Park. And we would work hand in hand with the city. They can be the educators. The Conservancy can actually go out and ask for the vote in a way that the city can't. So one thing that I think, we would love as we progress here is to get feedback from all of you on community groups, individuals, influencers. Things have changed a lot since 2014. So we want to make sure that the outreach campaign is a modern, digitally sophisticated outreach effort, and would love your thoughts and collaboration on that.
Thanks, Janet. I want to open it up for one last Q&A. Anything folks are hearing in the community, any questions you have, things that are unclear about bond, where we're at. We have some answers now. We don't have all the answers, but we want to make sure this group is especially clear. And we may be good. All right, Joey, can you wrap us up with a programming update?
Hey everybody, so just some exciting things going on in the park right now. It is all about those little yellow flowers called sunflowers. We have had thousands and thousands of visitors. I'm sure you've seen photos come across your feeds of folks visiting the sunflowers. We are right in the midst of sunflowers. If you have not seen them yet, you better do it soon because we're already starting to see what I like to call the technical term of drooping happening with some of the sunflowers. The sunflowers will go as quickly as they bloom, so please go enjoy. But we're just so excited about the opportunity to have folks from all over the region. I've talked to people from the western part of the state and outside of North Carolina visiting the sunflower field. We also did 2 Saturdays of engagement. Saw a couple of you folks out there. Sarah was there helping from the Rotary. Really appreciate that. Terry was there as well. So we engaged with hundreds of people that was their first time visiting Dix Park and just learning about the sunflowers and the development of the park. So just lots of fun and opportunity there. So that'll really be the focus over the next couple of weeks. We have our final movie night coming up on the 7th. We're doing our sports theme night. Stormy from the Hurricanes is going to come and interact with folks. It'll be Mighty Ducks is what we're showing. So
that was one of my favorite movies growing up. The Quack Attack is back.
The Quack Attack. So we have a few more months of Acorn Live music series in this building. Those are always every other Sunday from 2 to 4. So you can check those out. And then we have our awesome reoccurring programs that are going on, our yogas, our Tai Chis, all of those things. You can find all that information on dixpark.org with those listings. Kind of foreshadowing to the fall, just some things to be looking forward to. As Kate talked about, on the 18th of September, we're going to be doing an event called Yappy Hour. It's kind of a condensed version of the Papa-Palooza events we used to do over at the dog park. So we'll have some food trucks, some different vendors out there, some music going on, and we're really going to be talking about relocation of dog park and sharing information with that community around Plaza Play. So hopefully you'll be able to join on the 18th. That's going to be from 11 to 2. So that'll be coming out. We have an event on the big field through a third-party organizer called the Raleigh Balloon Glow. So it's going to be a balloon festival event where there'll be balloons glowing on the big field and tethered rides. So that'll be the last weekend in September. More information coming out about that and available on the web. Our Falling for Local Festival will be returning in partnership with Shop Local Raleigh on the 16th. I'm working with the Conservancy to plan our first ever Dix Park powwow on October 30th. And then our popular sky watching programs will be coming back on November the 6th. So lots of really cool events and programs that'll be coming up in the fall. Information always available on dixpark.org. And then Lauren will be working on sending information out via our email channels, social networks in the month of August about fall programs. So any questions about programs or events, anything coming up?
Dr. Paler?
I just want to say, we talked in our task force so much about everything being multi-generational. And boy, was it multi-generational with the sunflowers. We saw babies, we saw couples holding hands, we saw the elderly walking through. It was just phenomenal. And I just can't wait to see what Plaza and Play will do with all these multi-generational activities that are planned. I just had to say that. It warmed my heart. And we were all talking to each other, meeting each other for the first time. That's what Dix Park is supposed to be about. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, that's one of the great things about the sunflower field is it just brings folks from all over to view the flowers and enjoy the experience. We've seen the same thing. We've even talked as a staff team of different folks we've talked to and interacted with. So I completely agree. Thank you for saying that. Anything else? Great.
I was gonna do this from my seat, but Nick said I had to come up here. I will not keep us from food any longer. Food is going to be here in the chapel. If you decided that you want to leave Zoom and come here, it's in the chapel, not the Magnolia Room. And then last point, I know there are a lot of questions today around where things are going or tree removal or all of that. I think it's imperative that this community remembers we are the community committee. We are the voice of the community. So we need to socialize the vision of this park with our circles of influence, get their feedback and bring it back. please do not speak just for yourself, but make sure you are gathering the input of those that you have influence over and with, so that we can make sure we accurately reflect the community when we have the opportunity to comment on things like marbles or have discussions about what food comes in here. I know what food I like, but I need to know what food my community likes. And so it's important that we do that and make sure we take that message back. Really appreciate it. Enjoy burgers and macaroni and cheese and whatever you're having at home.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good evening, folks.